May 2026 was officially recognized as the beginning of the Great Fracture, as geopolitical conflict and the stranglehold of inflation rack the old world. The United States entered a fatal transition of power, a tectonic fissure in the global economy threatening to engulf familiar reality. The seismic shift in global architecture that followed marked more than just temporary difficulties, but a fundamental market upheaval, leading leading analysts to predict the arrival of a black swan event of unprecedented proportions. The unprecedented volatility looming over the planet shattered any remaining illusions about a soft landing, turning financial markets into an arena for survival.
We had a choice. Let these lunatics have a nuclear weapon. If you want to do that, then you're a stupid person, and you happen to be. I mean, I know you very well. Anybody that wants them to have a nuclear weapon is a stupid person. So we said we're going to take the greatest stock market in history, and we're going to go down a little bit, and actually that turned out to be incorrect because our stock market is now at the highest point in history.
Amid the complete collapse of previous logistical and financial links. While global capitals struggled to comprehend the depth of what was happening, key economic indicators began to signal the arrival of a defining moment when old methods of capital management had finally lost their effectiveness and relevance. The tectonic reshuffling that began in mid-spring has affected every level of international trade, creating a situation in which markets are already pricing in the worst-case scenario. Red flags are mounting by the hour, and the flashing warning lights of the entire global financial system indicate that the old order is irrevocably disappearing, leaving behind only the ashes of institutional hopes and the rubble of globalization. The stakes have never been higher as the world faces a fundamental reassessment of values in a context where traditional safe havens have ceased to function, triggering widespread fears of contagion that grip even the most stable economies. The evolving narrative of this crisis suggests that we are at the very beginning of a process that will forever alter the distribution of global wealth and influence. The foundation of the current catastrophe is a long-standing inflationary inertia that, like an invisible parasite, has been eroding the foundations of prosperity for decades. Economic headwinds, long perceived as merely a temporary inconvenience, by May 2026 had transformed into a destructive hurricane, sweeping away any attempts at government regulation. Trapped in their own debts and flawed forecasts, the world's central banks proved unable to loosen this stranglehold, leading to an irreversible market upheaval. The structural reversal the global system is currently experiencing is due to the accumulation of a critical mass of monetary policy errors, whereby artificially restraining interest rates merely postpone the inevitable regulatory reckoning. Today's reality is such that markets are already pricing in the final collapse of previous monetary dogmas, recognizing that the era of cheap money and predictable growth is over forever. This process is accompanied by the accumulation of colossal imbalances, which have transformed traditional financial instruments into sources of heightened risk, creating the conditions for widespread corporate repercussions and a massive capital flight in search of at least a glimmer of safety. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that key players no longer believe in the ability of institutions to halt the decline, seeing every new statement from officials as confirmation of their impotence in the face of the gathering storm. The accumulated burden of unfulfilled obligations and bloated balance sheets has become the very point of no return, after which any attempt at a course correction only exacerbates overall instability, turning local problems into a global crisis of confidence. The United States found itself at the very heart of this global storm, where in May 2026, the transition of power degenerated into a fatal institutional paralysis, halting the mechanisms for making crucial strategic decisions. Washington faced a situation that leading experts describe as an inevitable regulatory reckoning, where decades of political maneuvering and systematic ignoring of structural problems led to the complete depletion of state resources. Amidst a profound internal rift among the elites, the country entered a phase of painful structural reversal, depriving global financial institutions of influence crumble under the pressure of insurmountable macroeconomic forces. The mounting wave of bankruptcies and sovereign defaults in developing countries only underscores the scale of the catastrophe, transforming local disruptions into a single torrent of global destruction from which there is no simple or painless escape for world civilization. Interest rates have risen to prohibitive heights, and faith in a speedy recovery is fading with each close of trading sessions. Behind the scenes of this apparent chaos, sources close to the matter report an even darker game is unfolding, with the shadowy architects of global restructuring attempting to profit from the ensuing market upheaval. A logical question arises as to whether this great rupture is the result of a carefully orchestrated scenario for the controlled demolition of an outdated financial system caught in a profound ethical impasse. Whispers in the corridors of power hint at secret deals between major tech conglomerates and certain political groups seeking to exploit unprecedented volatility to redistribute spheres of influence in the new world. Red flags indicating possible coordination between key players are mounting, leading independent analysts to consider theories of a deliberately provoked crisis in order to wipe out gigantic debt obligations. The evolving narrative surrounding these hidden processes reveals the horrific corporate consequences for those excluded from the discussion of the new global development roadmap, turning them into victims of this monumental tectonic shift. While official reports chalk everything up to a coincidence, insider information paints a picture of a massive elite conspiracy, where the stakes have never been higher, and the price of error could mean the complete disappearance of entire sectors of the economy. This period of uncertainty has become the perfect pretext for the most radical reforms, which in normal times would have provoked fierce public resistance, but are now perceived as the inevitable price of trying to save the system from complete collapse. Theories about whether what is happening is a fatal error or a brilliant plan for a reboot continue to clash, creating a thick atmosphere of mistrust and suspicion that only adds fuel to the global financial conflagration. As the world struggles to grasp the contours of a new reality, red flags continue to multiply on the horizon, indicating that the events of May 2026 were merely the overture to a far greater drama. The global system's flashing warning light remains unabated, and the evolving narrative of this crisis leaves no hope of a return to the previous calm. Economic headwinds are gathering strength, threatening to transform the current instability into a protracted era of a total revaluation of all existing material and geopolitical assets. Financial institutions are waiting in anticipation of the next blow, realizing that the tectonic restructuring has only just begun, and its true scale is still hidden behind a shroud of uncertainty. Markets continue to frantically price in the worst-case scenarios, and the pervasive fear of contagion paralyzes any attempts at long-term planning in the business community. At this historical moment where the stakes have risen to previously unattainable heights, the old economic order has finally lost its legitimacy, and the contours of a new one are only just beginning to emerge through the chaos of market upheaval. Humanity faces an uncharted space where the familiar rules of the game have been burned away, and new ones will be written on the fly by those who manage to stay on their feet amidst this great rift. Tensions have reached their peak, and the world stands poised on the threshold of even more monumental and terrifying changes that will forever mark the end of the previous era.